You won't believe what you can find at the hardware store. Look at this. Salanova. Two varieties. This one is the green butter Salanova. I hope I'm showing that well because I've got the camera turned the wrong way for me. And this one is the green sweet crisp. These are what Curtis Stone, the urban gardener, grows. So I'm really excited. The seed for Salanova is really expensive. You can only get it from Johnny's Seeds. So when I saw this at the hardware store, I knew I had to get it. So let's see how it does. I'm going to put some in a pot and a couple in the garden bed and see how they do. It took me hours to figure out what to do with that Salanova, but I think I finally figured it out. In one of my garden beds out front, I only have two, and they're 4 by 10s, 4 foot by 10 foot. And one I have put a bunch of lettuces and things like that, fall crops in because it's October 3rd today. And in the other one, I really do want to clear it out and put a bunch of manure and such like that in there. It didn't do well this past spring and summer season, so I've decided. See this big pot right here? It's on wheels, and a neighbor gave this to me. I haven't yet used it, so I just washed it up really good. And it's called Earthbox. And so I'm going to put 6 of them in here, 3 of each. And over here I've got this long planter that I used for some Ruby Crunch lettuce during the spring. It did pretty well. But I do want to make sure a couple go to seed, because if I like the Salanova, which I'm sure I will want some seed from it. But I don't know if I have a long enough season to be able to cut it once or twice and then let it go to seed on the second or third growing. It depends on how it does for me, on how many times I cut it. And if you want to watch how this stuff grows, watch Curtis Stone, the urban farmer. He grows this stuff all the time. It's his favorite lettuce to grow. And he's a market gardener. So it's supposed to do really well, and then it grows into a head about that big, not real big, but you cut it off, and just leave a little bit, like an inch maybe at the ground, and then it grows back. And then you can cut it again, and I guess during the spring you probably get more cuts than during the fall, but I'm going to grow it, and I'm going to put 1 of each in this pot and put this indoors. So this one is going to have a different potting medium because I'm not putting compost inside. So first it's going to be in the house because I have new windows for the garden room. So it gets so incredibly hot in there, I don't want to leave it out there. I've been trying to harden them off, and apparently wherever they were grown was not real bright, because even in the morning sun, this particular one will wilt a little bit. It's kind of tempting to grow them separately, but I do want to see how each of them grows in similar conditions. That's why I'm doing 3 of each in the big pot, 2 of each in the planter that I had previously grown lettuce in, and I grew 4 in there before, so I'm pretty sure it's going to fit, and then 1 of each in this. So here we go. The wheelbarrow behind me is to mix up the soil, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the soil from this planter box and reuse it, because it's perfectly fine. Just add more compost, and I'm also going to add worm castings to it. I have a little bit of peat moss that I added some water to already in there. I didn't want to put too much because I don't want to affect the pH balance of the soil, so I just put a little bit. And then I have a bunch of humus that I had gotten when I purchased the soil from my garden beds out front. And this humus is like nutrient deficient completely, but I need to use it. I also have topsoil, but that's really heavy. I don't want to put it in pots. So I'm going to get a little bit of the humus, put it into the wheelbarrow, mix that in with some water too, because it's like powder dry. And then we'll add this soil in there. We'll put some compost, worm castings, and I hope that does it. We'll see. Okay, like I said, I didn't want to put too much of this is the peat moss, and this is reconstituted, so it actually is, more shrunk up than what it was. But I don't want to go too heavy on that. My tree is dropping things in, and the squirrel was dropping things in for me earlier. So I've moistened that, and then about that much humus, I don't know, what, 3 quarts, maybe 4? Probably 4 quarts. And I hope I didn't just completely dust you out, but I'm going to wet this down some. And this does repel the water until it's mixed in really well. So I'm going to go ahead and mix this in. Some. It might mix better if I go ahead and drop in that potting mix. So I'm going to go ahead and mix this up, dump in the potting soil, which I've kept moist so that I would keep the microbes and such like that in the soil alive, even though there hasn't been any plants growing in it in a few months. I kept watering it, keep it healthy. Let's go ahead and dump that in now, and then mix it up. So this is what the potting soil looks like, and it's got some perlite and vermiculite and all kinds of good stuff in it. And there it goes. Now, I was thinking, before I actually bother to mix this all up, I should go ahead and put in my compost. This is compost that I make, and it's not real moist right now. It does get darker than that, but I don't sift mine. I don't really see a reason. It's almost all entirely composted, and what's not is mostly there, so it's not going to take up nitrogen from my soil. So I'm going to go ahead and mix all that in, maybe add some worm castings now. That would be a good time. Get some of that in there now, and then maybe sprinkle some into the holes as well when I'm planting. So I don't know the quality of the worm castings. This is something I bought on Amazon, but I'm going to go ahead and put in a decent amount. And I'll get all this mixed up, and then we'll start potting. Now, I've never used one of these before. It's got that rack thing in the bottom, and it sits about 2.5 inches up from the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and pour my soil in. These holes here, I thought, just clear under, but it does have plastic blocking it off with some slits in it. It's also got a funny handle over there. I have no idea why it would have a handle on it. And the wheel lock. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and start filling this up. This could take a while. So I'll be right back as soon as I don't know, it might be pretty quick. This is light and fluffy. I should have watered it more. I think I will while we're doing this. Because you want your soil to stay moist all the way through. Well, this thing holds a lot more than I thought. So I haven't used all the soil in there yet. I left enough almost to fill up the planter, but I'm going to go ahead and use the bucket and put some more peat moss, some more humus, and some more compost in there, and moisten it, mix it up, and then I'll just top dress both of them. That way I know that they're done the same. So, and because I don't want to try and mix all of this back up, I can mix the other one easy, but this one would be more difficult. And like I said, I want them to be the same soil in both. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll do that anyway. I'm going to put 3 of these. And 3 of these, I think that was the plan, yes. And then 2 into the long pot and 1 into a single pot. And take the nicest one to keep indoors because it's going to need the best chance possible, I would think. I don't know. Because this one's on wheels, I can move it where I need to. Probably isn't going to be the most convenient thing. I'm thinking the long pot might be the easiest to move around. So I'm going to go ahead and put 3 of this kind on this side. 1, 2, let's plan this out. 3, like that maybe. And then 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that'll do. That looks fine. This here is to water it underneath, just like I do with my tomato plants, where I put the jug in the water. This goes underneath that bottom tray or rack in here, so it can water the roots as they get down below that. But for now, that is pointless because I'd have to really fill it up in order for it to reach these short little roots. So let's go ahead and maybe I should have watered these more yesterday. These larger leaf ones seem to use a lot more water than the others. Nice roots, not overcrowded, not root bound. And I'm going to put it in only as high as the top of the plant. Gently press it in. You don't want to compact the soil around the roots, but you also want to make sure it's solidly in there without gaps in the soil. And I'm going to go ahead and I mean, that's basically how you do it. You just keep going. Do the same thing. Support the plant. Push it from the bottom. Get it out of there. Never pull on the plant itself, because you might damage where it comes out of the soil at. So, at least, especially with tender things like lettuces, you don't want to grab it by the plant and pull it out. So, I'm going to go ahead and plant this out and plant the other, and then we'll see how each type does in this soil, and then we'll go in the potting room or the garden room and we'll plant the other 2 in a mix that I'll mix up in there. So I'll meet you inside. I was just starting to plant the green sweet crisp, and when I pulled it out, see, the soil doesn't just crumble away. It's got a different root structure. It's got a lot more finer roots. The other one had less thicker roots, so they do grow completely differently. I mean, other than the sheer look of them, they do. Even the roots are different. So that might have something to do with how well or poorly it's going to do here. I do want to try and save seed so that I can also try and grow it in the spring and see if it's something that can grow in the spring here. Because Curtis Stone, where he lives in Canada, it does get pretty hot during the summer, and he can grow it throughout the summer. I guess he lives in like a high desert area where it stays pretty dry. He overhead waters all of his stuff. So I'm hopeful, but we shall see. I might try loosening the roots on one of these to see if that makes a difference. So probably the last one in the corner over here so I know which one it is, and we'll see if that makes a difference because the roots were pretty tangled, so we'll see. You guys all know what I forgot, right? I forgot the worm castings in the holes, so I'm going to go ahead and just put a little bit around the plants because when I'm watering, because remember I'm watering from the top on this pot even though it has that under the surface stuff, and supposedly worm castings will not burn your plants, so you'd have no fear of it doing that. So I'm putting a couple tablespoons around each one. I'll rinse that off next time I water. I need to make sure that this doesn't get in the sun because I don't want the sun to damage the The seedlings, that's another good thing about this thing being on wheels. Just put it wherever I need it to be. With the other one, I'm going to go ahead and put a couple tablespoons in with each hole that I'm planting the Selenova in. We're in my garden room now, and it is smoking hot in here. So, and I have new windows that I'm going to install that'll be double pane, but I still have the corrugated clear polycarbonate on the roof for like the first 18 inches. Thinking about taking part of the glass and cutting it and putting it up there to make an insulator, but we'll see about that because that sounds kind of dangerous too. Anyway, until I get those other windows in here, it's going to be too warm to be able to keep the plants in here. But I made my potting table, and all of this room is in the upcoming videos that I'm going to start trying to post videos of the progress from last year. I got so far behind, I just kind of gave up. And so now I'm going to try to start getting them edited and posted. Editing just takes forever, and I suck at it. So I'm really trying hard. So I'm going to pick up where I left off last year and try and get the videos posted so you can see how I made this room. And also how I made the table that you're about to see in a moment. Right now it's kind of cluttered with all the things that are on it, but maybe I'll give you a quick view of it after I'm done with this. So let's go ahead and get started on mixing up some soil for the two that are going to be indoors. I hope that view is okay. So what I'm going to start with is, actually the potting soil is right underneath you, so let me grab that real quick. Thanks. So I'm just going to use cheap potting soil. Put about a third or so of that. That might be a little bit more than I want. That's fine. The potting soil is pretty heavy, so I don't want to put too much of it. But I can lighten it up by using cocoa coir or cocoa... I don't know how people say it. Coir is the easiest way for me to say it. And it is basically the husks of the coconut shredded up, rinsed, and sorry, that's my cake container from my last birthday, and it works great because it's big and it'll hold. I use small blocks of the coir because when you expand it, it really grows big. This whole amount plus a little tiny bit more was one small brick about 4 by 4 by 2.5 inches, and it makes this much. That's a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and put an equal amount of this, and this is nice and moist. In fact, I might be able to, no, I can't squeeze out any water. Not to mention my arthritis is acting up. Put in about that much of that. I'm going to go ahead and mix those two together for now because it's going to get harder to mix up as this thing gets full. I was going to mix it in a different container, but I didn't have anything clean at the time. Right now, I need to dig out something from the kitchen, probably a baking thing. This is just to catch any extra soil that I knock out of here once I start getting too full. And it's not big enough, as you see, to catch all the soil, but it's going to be better than nothing. Plus, I've got Wally underneath here, a Wally placemat. At 17 years old, kids think they're too old for such things like that. I don't know. Well, my son thinks he outgrew it. I don't think so myself. Okay, that's mixed up pretty good because I still have yet to put in something that will help to keep this. I have no holes in the bottom of this, and I prefer it that way because that way I don't have a drip tray for this particular dollar store pot. So it's easier for me to not have holes in it. I could put it in one of the seedling trays and it would work just fine in there, however, or I could just leave it in this. But I'd rather just not have holes in it and control how much. This is vermiculite. And I'll put in a good portion of that to keep it nice and loose and airy. That way there's air to the roots, and the roots do need air to stay healthy. Add a little bit more of the quartz, and I didn't want to put too much because I wanted to be able to get this mixed in. Plus, I also have the worm castings that I'm going to put in there. I'm going to put in a couple good handfuls. Well, this stuff is real fine, so it kind of just falls to your hand. See how fine that is? Worm castings is basically worm poop. Yes, I am putting my hands in worm poop, but it's pretty sterile, and that's why you can use it indoors without worrying about insects and all that stuff in it. Okay, I put in a lot because this is for indoor, and I have a tendency not to be good at fertilizing my plants indoors, so I forget or I'm lazy. So I like to start off, if possible, with a decent amount of food for my plants. Worm castings doesn't have that much fertilizer in it, really. This is like 5.1 or 5.01 or something like that NPK, but it has other micronutrients and things like that, and also beneficial microbes and stuff like that to help your plant grow. So between the potting mix and that, and the vermiculite for circulation in the roots, I think we'll be okay. See, potting soil is mostly at the bottom, but that's okay. Put in, like I said, a little bit more of this. I just didn't want to get so much in there I couldn't stir. And the coir has no nutrients in it. It's very sterile. So basically all the nutrients are either in the potting mix, and I think that mine did have some nutrients in it, probably not much, but in the worm castings. And also I'm going to hopefully remember to make a worm casting tea using the worm castings. I'll mix it in water and let it sit for overnight or 24 hours or something, and then use the water from that, like put it, I don't know, a couple tablespoons and half a gallon of water, and use that to water with in order to get the nutrients into the soil. That looks like the perfect amount of soil to me, and I'm going to go ahead and pop my little babies in there. I'm not going to add any more worm castings in there because I don't think it needs it. That looked like a lot to me. And I'm going to do the fuzzy one first because I did go ahead and tease out the roots of both of them in the long pot, the planter, not the big giant one, but the planter one. I went ahead, and what I'm doing is I'm just kind of gently teasing the roots apart at the bottom to open them up, because it is kind of root bound, and I want the roots to be able to spread out into the soil and pick up all the nutrients that it can, and also, be able to spread its roots and grow bigger. That's the plan anyway. And that one's done. After these are potted up, then I'm going to bring it straight into the house. That way I don't have insects get into it. On the other hand, last year I did have issues with fungus gnats in my house, so I'm just hoping that I don't start having that issue before the fall cools this room down enough and the new windows for me to be able to bring it back out. And hopefully, somehow, I'm able to avoid the fungus gnat issue. I have no idea how. But, oh, the new windows, though. They're single hung windows, so that I'll be able to open them. See how this soil is just so much looser than the other. And the roots are thicker. I don't have to tease these ones apart. I will a little bit. But I don't have to tease them apart. They are nice and loose. It's not root bound, so just a little bit. Not root bound, but just tease it a little bit. And push the soil around, and then we're done. I'm going to go ahead and water this in. That's cute. They look kind of small for the space, but this pot is not really very big, and so once these get growing, I'm hoping it's a big enough pot for them. Because, oh, when I was saying that makes a head, what I meant is it's a loose leaf head. So when it's cut off, it'll be like this, and it's a bunch of leaves, just densely packed. At least that's how it's supposed to look. And then you just kind of wrap your hand around it and take a sharp knife, and then cut it straight off. This, I'm not as sure about because I haven't seen him harvest this, I don't think. But I'll definitely go in and watch some more YouTube and see how he does that one before me trying to harvest it. It might be one of those where I take individual leaves. I don't know yet. But I'm going to attempt to grow these well enough to be able to harvest the way he does and see how I can do with this Selenova here in California. Also indoors and outdoors. So, it will be interesting. Over. And there's my sink. Oh, and I found this cute little colander that fits right down in there. So if I want to use it, I can rinse things in there. And this, I have it draining using I believe it's a 1/2 inch drip line. I have a video showing how I did it, but going straight out through the floor, and right now it's closed off on the end because I have no plants out there yet, but I plan to put a few artichoke plants on the outside of my garden room below my windows because I have plenty of space, several feet in order to do that. Let's go ahead and use this. I might have to fill this twice in order to water that, but that's alright. Kind of fun. Oh, and one way you know you're not overwatering is you test it before you water it. So my soil was not all the way dry. It's somewhat moist. So, okay, that's what it feels like when it's pretty dry. And so you kind of go by weight, and you don't want it heavy. You don't ever want it heavy. But compare it when you first put the plants in before you water it, and then put what should be a good amount of water, because you don't ever want them going all the way dry, at least not in the beginning. And depending on the type of plant, with lettuce, I don't want it to go all the way dry ever. It's a leaf plant, you know, that's what you're eating is the leaves. They're mostly water content. So I have to remember I put my dirty hands on that little water jug. So now that feels about right. It's medium weight. It's not real heavy. It's not real light. It could use a little bit more water, but that's enough for right now. Also, one good thing about the quartz is that it holds water really well. I hope you enjoyed your little visit inside the garden room. This behind me is my mom's old sewing machine, and the reason it's covered up in towels, I didn't make a curtain yet for the front window. There's 4 windows right here. There's windows across the top there, and there's a big window over there. The only place there isn't a window is right behind you. Next to the cabinet, there's a cabinet that runs all the way down here. So you'll see all of that in upcoming videos. I hope you liked the video. If you did, give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done that yet. Hit the bell button so you get notifications of when I post all those videos from last year and this year. I have one that I'm going to be posting shortly. It was something that I never expected to see. And it was just something interesting. It's not a project, but it's interesting, I thought. Anyway, I hope you do too. So anyway, I'll see you later. Bye.